This is Tell Me Exactly. I'm your host, Meredith Jensen. And joining me today is one of my friends. We go way back to the days of yore when we first met each other as brand new baby ProQA software training instructors at Priority Dispatch. So since maybe you're wondering, who is this mystery person sitting next to me that goes so far back? I am joined by Dr. Andre Jones. Andre, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today.
Well, I wasn't always a doctor, but back in the day when I was doing a lot of work with Priority Dispatch, I just really had a very passion to be involved in making sure that, the protocols were realized. And I really enjoyed being out on the road as a road warrior, making sure every agency that I could literally go to implemented the protocols and provided the best 911 service that they could. And I think, at that time, we were the best, and we were the only ones that could do it. And I wanted to be so very much part of that, and did so many classes. I remember at least 3 or 4 years in a row, I taught so many classes. I ended up going to the conferences basically sponsored.
For free, because that was the incentive.
Yeah, that was the
Teach
incentive.
More classes, and then we'll bring you to Navigator.
Right.
Yeah.
And worked with good organizations that allowed me that flexibility, and making sure the trips and stuff that I picked were in the regions. For example, when I was living in California, I did a lot of stuff in California. And just, really enjoyed that effort. I think our motto was there, creating meaningful change.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
yeah.
so it was always exciting to be alongside after you've done the tech eval, you've implemented, you've done the training, and then that first 911 call comes in and you see the person take the call and you're like, yes, it's working.
So what are you doing now? Tell us all about that.
Well, as luck would have it, I took a lot of what I've learned through the years of working in emergency communications abroad. So I now work at a national ambulance service, which has its own communications center in the state of Qatar, which is in the GCC, the Gulf countries. We refer to it, a lot of people, as the Middle East. So you have the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, those countries there. So we're right in the center. And I've been there now for 11 years. Started out being the main assistant executive director of both of the control rooms. We have 2. They are accredited, ACE. And we have using both MPDS and MTPS. So we're fortunate to be using the products and have been heavily involved over the last couple of years, specifically in training and quality improvement in the agencies.
Love it. And so, again, our listeners know that I hate those acronyms because they're not always universally understood. So MTPS is going to be that medical transport suite. So for those inter-facility transfers, it's actually protocols number 45, 46, and 47. So in this episode, we're telling you exactly how EMS services in Qatar are different from other places in the world. I can only imagine the unique challenges and unique things that you deal with over there, and I can't wait to hear all about it. So share with us how it's different.
To start, I think the uniqueness of it is the cultures. One thing we have to remember about many of the GCC countries, including Qatar, is that the majority of the population there are not nationals, meaning they're not from that country. A lot of expatriates come from a lot of countries to do a lot of the work in building and developing the country. Americans are one of them. They have a lot of people from the United Kingdom and a lot of other countries as well that build up a lot of the infrastructure, including India, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, those kind of countries, as well as the Philippines. So as well, in order to be able to, communicate with that demographic of people that we're doing our life-saving initiatives with, the ambulance services also proportionately has a lot of people from different nationalities. So the main structure that is the EMS system itself is not much different than it is anywhere else, in that we are an ALS provider. We have and respond to about 200,000 or so emergency ambulance responses with all of our ambulances. I think we deploy about 200 a day, and rapid response, like what we call a critical paramedic. So it's a very developed system using the medical priority dispatch protocol suite, dispatch determinants, really to determine how we respond, and we review those things under the premises of of ACE and to make sure that we're responding appropriately. But we do recruit our staff from abroad as well to deal with the various dialects that we have and the various nationalities. So since I've been there, I think in 2017, 2018, we did recruit missions to both Jordan and India because we were needing to fulfill that population gap and preparedness for the World Cup. We've also potentially had missions for the paramedics side as well to the Philippines, and before that, many years we had went to Tunisia as well. So we try to fulfill the main gaps of the main primary languages and go into those countries, and then use that to kind of get our population base.
So that's really unique. So what I'm hearing is that you described it as a mission, right? So you're essentially going to those places and seeking out employees that can then come work for you and communicate with your callers in those languages and dialects and be able to communicate effectively with the larger transient populations coming in and out of your area with those dialects. That's incredible.
Yeah, the challenge really is also in having a good selection process, and that's like here we would take like a critical or something like that, GovWorks or something. Here we don't necessarily do that. We have to do assessment tools that are a combination of different type of aptitudes, but also some basic things to make sure that they communicate effectively in English, because that's really the only language that we all share.
Okay.
And when we're doing the interviews, after they've taken some of these assessments in combination with usually a recruitment company, when they get to the point where they're ready to interview with us, some of it's like a handwritten stuff. They write a paragraph about something, other things they communicate, we have conversation with. We have to make sure that they're able to comprehend, because it's different to speak and translate than it is to actually interpret and then obviously have a conversation that's meaningful, because sometimes they don't always do well. And they promise, they'll say, yes, we work on it. But the reality is, just like me, I've been there 11 years and I really don't talk to anyone outside of people that really speak English because everyone else does. So it doesn't give me the opportunity to work on any other language. So,
to grow
and the reverse, if you do well or your native tongue, your mother tongue is Arabic, the chances are that if you don't speak fluent English, that unless you're part of this job network, you probably won't, because most of the people that you're going to be talking to on a daily basis are probably going to speak Arabic.
Okay. And then what kind of a scale are we talking about? Like, how many employees are we looking at with all of the different languages and dialects and communication?
On the frontline side, we have about 1,200 paramedics. On the ambulance emergency medical dispatcher side, we have around 200. There's 200 of us that work across 2 control rooms. It's like 60 in the Healthcare Coordination Center, which deals primarily with, as you said before, the Medical Transfer Protocol Suite. We do a lot of the inter-facility requests and those coming from some of our non-urgent care facilities and your general transport, if you will. And then everything else on the 999 side, which is our emergency number, comes across with the other, 130 EMDs that work in there. They're also licensed, so in addition to having the EMD and the ETC, it's the foundations for protecting them as clinicians. So we have an equivalent to what would be the National Registry. It's called the DHP, Department of Healthcare Practitioners, and we put them through this program to allow them to become licensed. So they're actually licensed, protected healthcare providers.
As dispatchers?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And how long does it take to get them all the way through all of this?
So the program is, again, the premise is basically that they're able to complete the requirements of IAED. Those are the 2 things, the EMD, ETC, and also the onboarding program that we have that would be like your classroom training that gives them the skills necessary in order to, back that training they got up with EMD, the localized stuff, and the localized SOPs, learning the CAD, phone techniques, customer service, and things like that. That onboarding process takes about maybe 2 months, but we give them the breadth of their probationary period to complete it before they're able to apply from a temporary license to a permanent one, which will allow them to remain in country, because they have to be licensed in order to be and privileged in order to remain in the profession.
Okay. So now let's talk about, if you will, how your agency responds to those different codes, and then how the low acuity calls are handled differently in Qatar?
So prior to the World Cup, we had primary responses of what we call X-ray, Yankee, and Zulu. So we take the primary response codes that we get, the A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah.
And we assign
priority
those,
dispatch
from
systems,
priority
yeah.
dispatch system, and we assign those accordingly. For example, an Alpha would be equivalent to an X-ray, which means you would send an ambulance, non-emergency,
Okay.
all the way up to a Delta or Echo, which would be Zulu for us, which would be an ambulance, emergency lights and sirens with a first rapid responder Charlie unit, which is a critical care paramedic.
Okay.
There's different combinations of other types of resources where we have different combinations of letters, but primarily it's X-ray, Yankee, Zulu. We implemented that also on the non-emergency side, or the protocols for MTPS, so it's very, very similar. So there's a common language because we do have staff that work in both centers. Granted, they're on two different CADs, they work with two different resources. Again, it's that commonality so that they're not as stressed out, because
Okay.
they're not having to remember too many things. We do recalibrate, so we do look often at the matrix. Again, that's something that we do. Is not necessarily part of ACE, but it definitely complements the objectives of it, to constantly be looking at, this is the response that you have. People are going emergency, non-emergency. What is the outcome on scene? What kind of patient treatment are they going? And once they're transported to the hospital, which we also are part of because the national healthcare provider, as far as the ambulance service and the healthcare system, is the same, which we're fortunate to have. And then we're able to see, if we need to make any adjustments with the matrix, as we call it, periodically. And yeah, we kind of do that.
So not wildly undifferent than how it would be done with the steering committee, to just make sure that your response configurations are all still working and making adjustments as needed, things like that. But
yeah, it's a combination of us doing your regular QA/QI, medical dispatch review committee, and the steering, working with clinical services to review the matrix and see what kind of issues that we're having. We did implement around the time of COVID. We were looking at Omega and how to expand that for what we call referrals, mostly referring people to our urgent care facilities, no transport, meaning that while we do feel that you may need medical attention based on the answers to the questions you've provided to us, we feel that an ambulance is not needed because we reserve those for, your true ambulance-related critical patients emergencies. We see high compliance with that, but we've also built in a provision of what we call escalation or overrides. So we allow the dispatcher within these criteria to say, if the patient is this age or they're experiencing these type of things or in this certain place, you at your level are able to override them, or you can escalate it to the supervisor for review to say, okay, yes, this patient should potentially go by their own means, maybe by private car, but because they're this age or because they're home alone, et cetera, non-mobile, those kind of things, we may need to send one, and we work through those. Now, we also have that on the non-emergency side, and we've expanded it based on clinical review because we didn't actually go to the full Omega. We went through and looked at even some of the alphas. I don't think there's any Bravos, but some of the alphas as well, where we've said, yeah, these patients that we've seen, the emergency department doesn't necessarily need to see them. We want them to start going to the urgent care, so let's start redirecting where we can.
And that's one thing that I really like that I heard, is that when you're looking at those responses and are they still working and kind of mining all of that data, I'm hearing that you're also using data from the outcomes. Like, that's huge in my opinion. I mean, to me, that seems like a really valuable resource because not a lot of 911 centers here in the States will have that kind of data available to really affect how they do business.
Yeah, because it's kind of, there's a little disconnect, obviously, with agencies where, the 911 center or the emergency communications center is different from the responding agency. There's that, we don't want to share data, we don't want to share the patient information. I think that there are some pieces of that as far as the life cycle or the journey of the patient that could potentially be shared. We're again fortunate because it's the whole health system. So we're able to see, from start to end, how and what the outcomes are all the way to discharge. So if we have a cardiac life save, we know from the time the call took to the time the patient discharged, we can see all of that. and helps us really understand, what we did well, and in some cases what we could improve on is a constant cycle of them.
And how many years in are you on this program with those changes, would you guesstimate?
I would say the major changes probably were right before COVID. And the reason why is because the call volume was getting so high, we needed to really look at efficiency as well as effectiveness and utilization of resources. And we carried it on as well into non-emergency because, again, we found that though urgent care centers typically should be a safe haven because they are a medical institution, depending on their licensing and privileging, they may not always be able to care for certain patients. So we want to make sure that we're not, doing anything to the detriment of the patient, and really saying, okay, how long or how much longer could they stay there versus going to the emergency department, if they actually need to. But we're also finding that in some instances, the urgent cares were using the emergency departments as a means to get people into the greater health system, because there's where the outpatient and the clinics were, if you will. We don't do that so much here, I think, in the States. I think that there's a different type of relationship with referrals to outpatient clinics and follow-ups. But, for example, if you're sending someone to the hospital, a lot of time they direct admit through the emergency department. They're not there to go to the ED, but that's really the only place that they can go so they can get registered. And this is what was causing the bottlenecks, because you've got people that shouldn't be there with people who should be. And we just needed to kind of find a way to redirect them.
So with about at least a full 5 years, if not going into 6 years, as your guess there, of data, what would you say has been the biggest impact and benefit of evolving your systems in that way?
I think the biggest impact has been improvement in utilization of resources. We find when we get extremely busy during peak times, whether it's different times of year, which our seasonal changes definitely are different than what I would say they would probably be, stateside. We also have things surrounding religious holidays and stuff like that. So when we were trying to monitor those things to make sure that you're not on demand able to always put in your service delivery, increasing, 5 or 10 or 15 more ambulances to respond. Sometimes it's about, well, should we actually be responding anyway? And in many instances, we probably shouldn't. So we're looking at those processes that we can have in place that actually redirect to make sure that they're utilized for when people actually need them and not wasting a lot of resources. Do we get complaints? Yes. Often we do get people, well, I called for an ambulance and they told me that they weren't going to send one. And then we explain the why, why they weren't sent. There's still sometimes some disagreement, but for a lot of those purposes, one of the things we did for the urgent cares facility, we went out and we did a program called Hearts, which is where we taught them what our procedures were. We actually went and we said, this is what it means when you call our 16099 number, which is our healthcare coordination center, how you raise an ambulance, what questions we're going to ask you. And then we worked with the nurses and the frontline staff that make the calls so they could appreciate the fact that, they're just not making these things up. This is protocols. This is something that's, internationally accepted norms. We can range as far as how we respond, but in some instances, it's not appropriate. You're saying you have a patient that we know what they need is an outpatient intervention. We know that you need to send them to the emergency department from your standpoint in order to get them into the health system. What I'm telling you is that an ambulance is not the way to do that. Yeah, that's not that's not what the ambulance is for. So it's that giving that education of redirecting and helping them as much as possible work in the parameters of what they have, and sometimes changing mentality. And a lot of the staff like those. When we went out to the urgent cares and we did these education campaigns, they really enjoyed it. So we wanted to extend it to the hospitals as well.
I love it. That sounds like a great way to make sure that everybody kind of really understands the whys, like you said. So you've dealt with some pretty intense, and that I like that those words don't even come close to describing accurately what I'm trying to say here, but some unique situations that are just like on a global scale. Let's talk first about hosting the World Cup.
World Cup.
And how did that affect your day-to-day operations? And maybe next question would be, what were some of the lessons that maybe you took away from it?
I think that the best strategic plan that the country did with respect to the healthcare sector on the World Cup was separating World Cup operations from day-to-day
Everything
operations.
else, yeah.
I'm not sure, I can't really say whose idea it was, but I was on some of the tactical group committees when it came to operationalizing what the vision was. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to get it done, but this is actually, this can work. This can work. And that was what we wanted, for it to work. And obviously people come with, what kind of things keep you up at night. Devil's advocate things adding to the conversation. But ultimately, it was really about the people that are in the country may not want to go to the World Cup. That's a reality. Maybe they'll see it on TV. But when they need access to the health system, they don't need to feel any different.
Right.
Just because the games are here.
Just because
that
that's
was
happening.
That was the priority, and the reverse is true. So it was a lot of things like working on this project called "Where for Your Care," where we were able to go out even into the hotels, the host hotels, and tell them when they need an ambulance, this is who you call. We had different ambulances posted, different places. We had competition sites, non-competition sites, and you kept up with that activity through the medical command center I operated to keep up with everything that was going on there. But then you had a whole nother, this is the country kind of thing. So it was two parallel things. Even the hospitals, they weren't segregated, but you knew that when a person came in to the emergency department, are you here for the World Cup? Yes, this way. If you're not, go this way. And everybody knew what to do. The reporting was very seamless in that we had mechanisms through all of the sites with relates to the command centers that we had for the dispatchers that they're working at to be able to keep up with all the information and make sure that we were accounting for every single patient encounter that we had in the stadium, every site, everywhere. It was a huge feat. We changed a lot of the scheduling as well because we wanted to make sure that there was redundancy in that. So we moved before we were on like a 2-day, 2-night, 2 off, but because of the rotation schedule, it was more like a 2-day on, 2-day off kind of thing. So it just compacted things on a little bit because they were opening up all these different kind of control rooms to make sure we had a lot of redundancy for a lot of the various operations. So it worked very well.
Okay.
I think it came to success, and a lot of it had to do with planning on the first part. We always was talking about being resilient, but why be resilient and reactive when, okay, we know what to expect. Through reading, a lot of us, some of us, including myself, were academics, so we were looking at articles on what did they do at other World Cups, and we said, okay, what can we kind of do to prepare for this? And when we developed the Medical Command Center, it was putting structures in place like, a semi-CAD system, patient tracking stuff, different tools and resources that allowed us to communicate along the sites, again, completely separate from the 999 operation. But we knew what each other was doing. That was very important, but it wasn't, it was a relationship that relied on each other and kind of independently for that.
So would you say that maybe the biggest lesson or takeaway, what I'm hearing is that pre-planning, that preparation ahead of time, trying to sort of think about all the possible things that are going to need to be considered, also knowing and being ready to be flexible that you're not going to be able to think of everything ahead of time.
Correct.
Right? So,
yes, that was one of the biggest takeaways. Yes, I would agree with that. And also the even as early as we planned, people wanted even earlier.
Yeah.
So we try to do that now because we do host quite a few events. Is we have like a checklist of things that we need. A month in advance, 6 months, 1 year, and we kind of go down from there like a time clock to make sure that all those things are kind of in place and that the people that need to be. We even in the Medical Command Center trained non-clinician type staff to be able to come in and provide a level of customer service because we were talking, to embassies, people calling, oh, there's something happened, was a person from my country, and we had to be able to train them on those kind of aspects of things that we didn't necessarily think, oh, it's not the call that we would think that we would normally get. Yeah. But it was those kind of things that we drew on the experience of things that it's kind of like that. I don't know what to do, but I know what I can do. So you try to draw on those previous experiences to adapt what you can to the current circumstances.
Okay. So now let's talk about the most recent Gulf conflict. And what was your role during that time? How did that shape EMS preparedness and response? I mean, I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
So we've always had a really robust major incident preparedness and response plan. It's actually part of our mandate in the ambulance service. We have huge cadre of different types of vehicles. But this one kind of tested things a little bit different, outside of our regular routine, like redundancy things, because we were worried about, as things changed, threats to, infrastructure, major things like power and potential nuclear fallout. But again, because we started preparing for those things with the World Cup, they were always there. Now it's more like, okay, dust the cover off these things to make sure that we're actually, kind of aware. So I think the biggest thing that we probably really was kind of concerning was messaging. Obviously, when the attacks are going on and you're hearing things in the air, and then eventually they start doing the emergency alerts, it's, how do we collect information to be able to know and broadcast to the people who are making tactical decisions about how to respond to certain things, kind of what to do, and then to feed into the strategic. I was on call during the first weeks as a tactical advisor for national healthcare incidents. So I'm responsible for, the movement and tracking of pretty much everything related to the hospitals, but it's a dual role because I'm also head of profession for emergency frontline call taking. So it's like, it's a lot going on. So we work together very well and we understand that, but it was really about, again, calling on those things that we maybe probably hadn't done in the past, but looking at, what do we do to try to, curtail a lot of the anxieties of what's happening. And we're fortunate that in emergency services, we really act very professional and that we do what is needs to be done. We don't necessarily know how things will manifest itself about the feelings of it. Like I didn't feel a lot of anxiety and emotion until after I landed here this morning. Because there I was safe and in the constant act of response. And it's like, I don't have time to be emotional.
Mode.
Yeah. I don't have time to be emotional. When I landed here, I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe over the last 24, whatever it was, there's been missiles and stuff falling out of the sky, interceptions and stuff. And it's kind of emotional. But when you're in it, you bring out your books, you've got disaster plans, and for the most part, everything worked. I think one of the things we probably changed is decentralization of our call centers. We had kind of done it before during COVID, but one of the reasons why it was more important to do it now is because the threat of communications command centers being attacked. So we started putting them in remote centers, and there was challenges with that, though we had tried to do it before. It wasn't, I would say this, there's never really a sense of urgency until there is. It's like, this is something we want to think about doing until it starts happening. It's like, no, we got to get this done now. And it worked very well. Yes, there were some issues with, the connectivity between making sure that there was automation like they were in the main environment with the ProQA data going over into the call taking. But within 24 hours, the right people were there and they were able to get it. And it didn't impact at all our ability to still continue to do the QA and QI because they acted and conducted professionally just as they would if they were in the main control room. The only difference is they were at 3 or 4 different other places, just in case one of the other places went down. So those were the primary things that were really different. I mean, obviously, we were asked not to share certain sensitive information, people who were injured, videos about the damage because for security reasons, not for just for crowdsourcing because of things that if people saw, they could put pieces of the damage puzzles together, but also because of the triggering, the trauma. The more you see it, it's just, even now when I think about it, it's kind of like not necessarily something that I want to think about, but because they haven't been showing it as much, it's like it doesn't. You kind of forget about it.
Okay.
But hearing the emergency alerts, and seeing the missiles, it's you kind of relive it.
Was that your first time experiencing something like that?
So this is actually the third attack. First one was a retaliation attack. I would say not as horrible was back in June. I was on call that week as well. It's like every time I'm on call. And I did the after action for that. And then the other one was when the assassination attempt of the negotiators. And that was in October. I was on call for that. So I did the after action review for that. And that one was very, very similar in that the things that we used from that situation to prepare for this was a little different because we didn't know. You know what I mean? It was these other two instances was like, it just happened.
Yeah.
Whereas this was kind of like, we think something's going to happen. And then when it started, it was just like, it's go time.
Yeah.
And everybody,
Flip the switch
yeah.
into survival mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that's where we've been for until they kind of let things up for leave over the last week or so.
Okay.
So even getting here was kind of a challenge. No go, working with agency on travel arrangements, but
Yeah.
we were able to get it. But it was getting on the plane, not knowing whether or not I would actually get to take off.
Right.
It was terrifying.
I can't even imagine.
So I was like,
But you're here.
yes, I am.
We're actually physically in the same space together.
We're in the same space.
We're actually at Navigator
Yes.
in Las Vegas
Yes,
right
yes.
now. So
But-
you made it here safely. So how's everybody else in your center doing after something
Good.
like
I
that?
mean, again, the messaging has been very, very good, very supportive. I think one of the things I can say about the Ministry of Interior that they've been really good about, it's a primary, like a public safety agency, is immediately they started, just like they did kind of with COVID, putting out, the teams were brilliant. The type of media that they were doing, both for all different types of I don't say environments, but all for the demographics. So people who like, cartoony type stuff, there was that, to
Okay.
play. But they also do
Different
did stuff-
modalities.
yeah, different
That's what
modalities.
you're looking
They
for.
had people that were in the control room, in the National Command Center, and they were delivering messages about what to do when you see the missiles. How do you respond to the alerts? How do you respond to general messages? Just getting people to understand that this will be a lot better if you, I don't even want to say that you use the word cooperate,
Right.
but if you understand
Mm-hmm.
what is going on, what is happening, and don't panic. That message came out quite a bit because that's, you imagine alert goes on. Oh my God, there's an alert. Or yes, we all know, we all see it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
what
you all
is the
feel it.
messaging when you see a missile? Because I don't know if I can even wrap my brain around something like this.
So, for the most part, it's fortunately it's interceptions that were coming over the city and launching toward whatever targets that they had.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was the military base, sometimes it was other things. They're using drones as well. They started using aircraft to intercept as much as possible, but in some instances toward the last weeks or so, when things were getting beyond that point, they would do the emergency broadcast. Specifically, they were doing it more often than not, and I think it just became so scary that they started minimizing it to certain times of day or certain times of night. Because if you didn't really hear the booms, or they started localizing it so that it wasn't the whole country hearing. It was like if you were in this area, you could hear it, kind of like we do tornado sirens.
Yeah.
But it's on your phone. But I was on call. I got 3 phones. Wah, wah, wah,
Yeah. Right.
And then you get to the point where you're just like, okay, just
Yeah.
kind of ignore it. You shouldn't. But we never felt not safe. This
Okay.
is the thing.
Yeah.
Even when you were seeing it, the people, they shouldn't be, out looking in the sky like it was the 4th of July.
Oh my goodness.
Not good.
Right.
Because this debris, this is
Right.
the biggest danger was the debris that was falling after the interceptions. That was the biggest worry. No one was really worried about getting hit by anything, though you potentially could if you were a target of what they were shooting at, which
Right.
most of our civilian areas weren't. It was the debris and the uncertainty that when those things started falling, if it would actually hit you. So being outside with your mouth open, looking in the sky, probably
Not a good idea.
not
Right.
a good idea.
But I think that was probably obviously a good move, though, to kind of make sure that the main takeaway message for your citizens in your community was don't panic, right? Because I can only imagine if you hadn't done those kind of campaigns to kind of remind people here's what to be thinking about or here's what to know, we might be having a whole different conversation
Right.
now about
But we had to do that internally. Part
Yeah.
of being the tactical advisor for the National Healthcare was working with our gold commanders, which are your incident commander, if you will, because it was an incident and it was prolonged in our meetings, was also to address the issues and concerns of the staff. Yes, just like similar to COVID, you've got things that are going on, people are sick. I mean, think about Katrina. People
I was just gonna ask that,
banding their
like-
posts and leaving,
Yeah.
like my family. And it's a little different situation there because, like, where are you gonna go?
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
But also, we had to be able to address those issues. So we pumped up some of the things related to wellness, activating the hotlines. We already had them, but it was putting those things out there
Yeah,
to say, yes,
reminding
if you
everyone.
need someone to talk to about what's going on, we have this number. Reaching out to the staff as well. And also providing other reassurances for people who maybe didn't want to attend work, or maybe they were stuck abroad, providing different information to make sure that they were well taken care of, and that we were considering as much as possible what to do in a lot of the situations. Checking buildings, if there's a concern about some of the buildings, safety, just making sure that
structurally sound and things like that. Yeah. That's what I was gonna touch on that a little bit, right? Like, did you find yourself bringing into this situation or this incident, calling back on anything previous experience? Because you sort of grew up in public safety stateside, right? Like you're an expat.
Public safety stateside, but also in the field of emergency management when you're doing all hazards. I think going back to teaching ETC and that list, maybe 5 years ago, where you were reading all the things, and you're like, well, this would never happen. And you're like, pandemic.
Oh, but guess what?
Now I'm waiting for the avalanche. I haven't lived anywhere to have one yet, but everything else, earthquakes, everything else has been there. Yeah. But you do recall certain things that you want to deal with, and with respect to the staff and engagement, mostly making sure that they're taken care of and that they're okay, but also with how you treat incidents and how you organize information. Developing, for example, a command instruction that gives advice on doing certain things, like, for example, people who may be fearful about coming to work. How do you prepare communication that actually suggests that, okay, we understand that there is this fear, but with public safety or healthcare, we have a job and responsibility to do. Obviously giving the power to have those direct conversations with your direct supervisor about your concerns, but not making necessarily a blanket statement that's going to set everybody into pandemonium is also a good idea. So as an advisor, you try to go through and negotiate those type of situations so that you can make the best out of it.
Yeah. And then after experiencing something like that, how do you get back to normal operations? Like, what does that look like, right? I mean, I suppose there's a lot of variables there, right? Because it just depends on how long was the incident, what kinds of things were affected in terms of, interoperability and things like that. But how do you get back to quote unquote normal?
Yeah, most of our plans are scalable. And what it is that we try to have routine meetings. They call them tactical advisor meetings. And basically they assess the situation. They look at some of the things that are going on, whether it's media input or things that they have going on, any issues that may be raised regarding service delivery. And we just check and we talk about it and we see, okay, where are we at now? Is there anything that we need to do moving forward? What are the concerns? What are the general sentiments? What are the command instructions from people from the ministry as far as what they want us to do? Are we ready to move back to normal? If they say yes, then we start de-escalating. So we have different steps of escalation. It could be A, B, C, D, E, and then when it gets to a certain point, you say, okay, we're no longer going to do E and D. Now we're just in this. We have a little like monitoring state, those kind of things. So it does make it easier. To your shoulders kind of come down as the levels kind of drop, but it's pretty much the same steps. It's just going kind of in the opposite direction when we know it's a little bit more comfortable to let the guard down. Right. But it takes a lot of, are we sure? Go, no go type of thing before we're kind of there. Because as you can imagine, like now with leaves and stuff being opened up, there's the concern that people may want to leave because they don't think, things are safe anymore, or they want to travel and because they need a break. Right. And it's kind of how do you manage that and provide comfort to people who otherwise may be thinking those things. You can't fault them for that. But it's personal. They need to talk to their families, obviously, to have that. And we provide, as much as we can, different types of programs that also support that. We have second victim type programs, as well as different type of health and wellness. We don't call it peer support. It's something else where you can talk to other people in your profession about certain things that are going on that can help you navigate it if, in fact, you need someone to, in addition to the psychology people. They can have those conversations.
And how's Andre? Are you back to normal? Are you back to square zero, or still a work in progress?
As prolonged as it is, even with COVID, it's kind of like you take a cardiac arrest call. When it's done, the phone rings, and you're on to your baby delivery. Again, you never know how the emotions will come up and manifest itself later. Some of the stuff I kind of compartmentalize, and you're just like, okay, it's fine. But like I said, when I got off that plane, when I landed, I was like, whew, I feel it because I'm no longer in, I have to be protective and strong for the people I'm in and work around and make decisions about, the community. It's just me.
You're here by yourself, and you're back to where you came from, right? Yeah.
So it was kind of revealing. I got a little emotional when I was speaking as well.
I can imagine,
because it kind of like came out that the experience, having been there as long as I have, and never expecting, anything like that.
Right.
You go, no one wants to experience. And it's not something you necessarily, I've worked in Atlanta, I've worked in different places where, people shoot all the time. This is not.
No, that's not the same thing.
Not the same.
Not even close. No.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
We just try to block as much out, kind of as possible. Which is one of the things that the country did very, very well at, in understanding that, is they didn't want people recirculating that stuff over and over again because of the trauma that it causes.
Right.
And also the misinformation and, with AI and people, doctoring up stuff, but also because it can potentially, with crowdsourcing, bring in information as far as where things were hit, where this stuff was coming from. It's like, we don't need
more panic.
Yeah, we don't need more panic. And that's unfortunately what was lost cause. So I think that actually helped normalize it more than anything. Aside from the occasional, boom, boom, boom every now and then. But I can tell you when your neighbors are upstairs rearranging furniture in the middle of the night.
It probably triggers you, to go, what is that? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So exciting time.
Well, after hearing all of this, my takeaway, Andre, is I'm so thankful that you're sitting here with me today and that you've made it to the other side of this, or at least maybe based on what you're saying, to the beginning of the other side of this for you. Because to your point, wow, you may not even be aware of how this is going to, manifest itself for you days and months to come, right? So thank you so much for your candor and being willing to come and share your experiences with us. And if any of our listeners can take even an ounce away from what you've talked about, that's, to me, just so worth it. And my friend, I'm so glad you're here. And
I'm glad to be here as well.
I'm so glad that you get to have this time to maybe recoup, to maybe, recharge those batteries and enjoy life and find joy in the week, right?
Joy.
Good.
I find joy. One thing that I would say that helped me, and I've talked about this a couple of times, is being able to have that work-life balance, even in the midst of things going on. Being able to step away and get into the gym and just change and shift gears definitely helped me.
Good.
But like anything in this profession, that all hazards approach, being able to take again what you can from what you know. I mean, we don't have a missile protocol, but there are some other things that we could use to respond with fires and debris and stuff like that. So that's primarily what we tapped into.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
I
me.
am just so happy that you came to talk with us and share this with us. And can I just say, hopefully it doesn't come across as sounding condescending, but I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
Is that okay? Can I say that? Yes. Because I feel like way back in the day when we first would have met at that Navigator 2010, when we were both just little babies in our careers and doing little things, who would have thought that we would be sitting here like this today? And I just beam with pride that I get to say that I knew you all those years ago and got to sort of watch you come to where you are today, and you're just an absolute powerhouse in the industry. And
thank you so much.
I watched someone earlier today in the hallway say, "Are you the doctor?
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to come to your session." And that just makes me swell with pride for the amazing things that you're doing in the industry.
I appreciate the opportunity and the confidence of the academies to continue to invite me back as well.
Of course. Why wouldn't we? You're amazing in all the things that you do. So I'm just lucky that I get to say I know you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to let us know what you liked, and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Look for @TellMeExactly to get the latest on all things emergency communications. Tell Me Exactly is a Priority Dispatch Corporation podcast developed by our team of protocol experts and hosted by me, Meredith Jensen. With Cody Ekman as producer, Reading Roberts as sound engineer, Scott Robinson and Jason Barber as executive producers.